been a specific kind of genre lately that I've read in books that's become kind of popular. The kind where every chapter switches between perspectives, different narrators, different voices, different interpretations of the same event. And usually the goal is to show that no single person ever sees the full truth. After reading 2 books, The Correspondent and That's Not How It Happened, I realized both books were trying to explore the same idea. One of them completely trusts the reader to slowly uncover its characters on its own, while the other kind of explains things a little too much. Just like the little video of me and Freya fighting in the yard, or is it me and Freya playing in the yard? There was no need for words, no needs to explain things during the action. The music changed between playtime and then the dramatic music. Whose perspective was whose? Who was enjoying the fight? Who was enjoying the playtime? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome back to The Bookish Wolf. So as I read both of these books, I was immediately annoyed that each chapter was a different point of view. Most of the time, I just get irritated by having to try to keep up with things, but they both had their own take on perspectives. So The Correspondent follows Sybil Van Anthrop. She's an elderly former lawyer who is slowly going blind. The novel is told entirely through letters, not journal entries, but actual correspondence between Sybil and the people in her life. At first, Sybil feels almost unlikable. She's extremely formal. She's very rigid. She's very black and white on morality. She's the kind of person who believes rules exist for a reason, why she's a lawyer, and the people should follow them no matter what. And while you read the letter she writes, she feels like a lawyer when she writes them. Everything is structured, it's precise, it's controlled. So when I first started reading her early letters, some of them just seemed unintentionally hilarious to me. She had sent a sympathy letter to someone, and inside of that letter there was a 25% off coupon to Applebee's. Not a gift card, just a coupon. I remember back in the day, coupons were the thing. We'd go to any restaurant and we had a folder of coupons. And so I know how comforting a coupon could be. If I got a coupon right now for Applebee's, Freya, we're definitely getting that appetizer. Once she wrote an angry letter to the newspaper of an article she believed should have never been published. There was one moment where she becomes furious at the newspaper for printing a story about a father accidentally backing over his own child with a vehicle. Most people would focus on the tragedy itself. Sybil's focus is on the fact that private suffering shouldn't become public entertainment. Even when she's frustrating, the book makes you understand why she thinks the way she thinks. That's what makes the writing so good. Underneath all of her coldness is someone deeply uncomfortable with emotions. Letters are how she controls her distance between people. She can rewrite herself before anyone sees her. And slowly through these exchanges with family members, old colleagues, strangers, and even customer service workers, the reader starts to piece together who Sybil really is. We learn about the death of her young son, her fractured family relationships, the loneliness of aging, her fear of losing the independence of her eyesight. But the book never just tells you these things directly. It trusts us, the reader, to notice the patterns. Who she writes to, who she avoids to write to, what subjects she changes, the things she refuses to fully say out loud. Throughout the whole book, there is one letter that is just a continued one not sent. We don't know who it is to. The first time we see that letter, it's a continuation of previous attachments, but it is to someone close that Sybil trusts to divulge every part of her life. And at the end, we do figure out who it is to eventually. And the reveal works because the book just never treats it like a giant twist. It just quietly settles over the story. And what makes it so powerful is that the book never feels repetitive, even when she's recounting events we already experienced. Instead, it feels like a memory. Like everyone trying to desperately hold on to the shape of their life before it disappears along with her eyesight. And I think one of the most powerful moments of the book is when she does finally sign that unsent letter and we figure out who it's to. It makes the fact that her eyesight is going that much stronger. The perspective storytelling is done perfectly here. It's because the structure itself is the emotional payoff. The story could only exist in this format. I cannot say the same thing about That's Not How It Happened. The basis of the story is it's about how a mother's memoir about raising a son with Down syndrome is selected to become a Hollywood film. As the movie moves into production, the family is forced to confront uncomfortable questions about how Emmett's life, Emmett is the son with Down syndrome, has been portrayed and who truly owns the story and whether the people around him have been speaking of him instead of listening to him. So the author of this book was a script writer for the show How I Met Your Mother, and that writing style will carry on to this book. As I was reading the book, it felt like a script or a screenplay, the way it was formatted. Even though it doesn't have line by line of who's speaking, the chapters itself make it seem that way. So the characters are talking directly to us. It's kind of like the show The Office with its interview style confessionals. Something chaotic or dramatic happens, and then each character basically steps aside in a different room and explains their thoughts and feelings afterwards. However, what felt odd to me was how that same scene would sometimes get repeated 3 different times from 3 different perspectives. The constant fourth wall breaking didn't feel like it was aimed at us, the reader. It felt like the characters were just talking into a void. It created a strange detached feeling when I read it. The 4 perspectives we see in this book are Paige the mother. She was an investigative journalist. When Emmett was born and was diagnosed with Down syndrome, she became a stay-at-home mom. Since her husband Rob was a screenwriter and would make more money than her job for Emmett's bills. The second perspective is Rob the father. He was a screenwriter who had great success of his film Subway series. It was inspired by him and Paige's first date. He started to slowly lose job opportunities once the years passed, and he started to teach college courses on screenwriting to help pay the bills. Emmett is the son. Emmett's an awesome dude. He lives in a group home that his parents fund with roommates who have their own medical situations. He works at a coffee shop his mom came up with to help adults with disabilities to learn how to be dependent and learn how to work on their own. Darcy is the last perspective we see. She is the younger sister. However, when she learned that kids would pick on Emmett when she was about 6 years old, she felt like she had to be protective of him. Growing up, she always felt in the shadow of Emmett. She felt her parents didn't need to worry about her as much because she was a typical child. The way the author writes Emmett, actually, his chapters use simpler observations and sentence structures, but they never make him feel unintelligent. Instead, the writing highlights how differently he processes the world compared to everyone around him. So for myself, as somebody who works around students in special education, I thought those sections felt very authentic because Emmett notices things other people just overlooked. He notices routines, change in tones, silence between his family members. Emmett is in his 20s, so he notices the sacrifices his parents make for him. There's a feeling throughout his chapters that people constantly assume they understand him better than he understands himself. And those moments are genuinely heartbreaking. Paige's perspective also serves as an important role because she constantly reminds the reader of the emotional exhaustion involved in caretaking and family responsibilities. A lot of her narration revolves around emotional labors, frustrations, and the disconnect between how men and women communicate inside the family. And I understand what the author was trying to do, but this is where the book started to lose me a bit. Their perspectives often feel less like distinct people and more like different angles explaining the same thing. The author frequently has chapters directly explaining emotional dynamics instead of just allowing us, the reader, to observe them. Especially with Paige, there are moments where their narrator repeatedly circles back to the phrases, men don't understand, women carry things differently, and from a man's perspective. With all these phrases, the one thing that we have to mention here is the author of this book is a male. So throughout the book, we are told by Paige that men don't know how to write a female character in movies. So the whole time I'm reading this book, I felt like I shouldn't trust the perspective of the characters in the book because the book is written by a man. There were also moments where the book would pause to explain facts or statistics about Down syndrome in a way that felt a little unnatural again. And I understand why the author included them. I think the intentions were clear to educate the reader and build understanding about Emmett's experiences. And sometimes those sections felt inserted rather than them flowing into the story through the characters themselves. Instead of learning about Emmett by simply living alongside him through the story, the book constantly steps outside the narrative to explain him. And because of that, I occasionally became more aware of the author's intentions than the actual characters. Okay, so one of the things I think that the author's style was trying to get across was the movie that Rob wrote had success with, the Subway series. In the book was supposed to be a timepiece of that era. The slang and the style is a time capsule when people would watch the Subway series. So I think the author was trying to do this with the book. I think the author was trying to do that with this book, and he was trying to make the 2010s a time capsule in this book. So I think the author is trying to do that with this book. He's trying to make this book a time capsule of the 2010s, and it doesn't feel right. All right, so the way Darcy and some of the younger people talk is just so awkward. He uses the phrase "that's fire" and "that's chill" a lot. But when you read it, it kind of feels like when a dad tries to use slang to fit in with his kids. I worked at a high school and I was there when the 2010s were going on, and the kids that are in the book don't feel like they represent the way they're supposed to. Why does The Correspondent works better is because the biggest difference between the two books, it understands that multiple perspectives should create mystery. The reader should constantly be reevaluating the characters based on new information. At first, Sybil feels emotionally cold, then stubborn, then unintentionally funny, then heartbreaking. Every letter changes your understanding of her. The book trusts the silence as it's letting you figure out what's happening between the gaps, between the letters. People describe Sybil differently because everyone experiences her different. In that way, it felt real. Meanwhile, that's not how it happened. Often explains itself too much. It tries to make itself too clear. Instead of allowing the tension between the perspectives build, the book sometimes uses different narrations to reinforce the same emotional point over and over. And because of that, the structure occasionally feels more repetitive than revealing. There are still genuinely emotional moments in the book, mostly with Emmett. But when I finished The Correspondent, I felt I had slowly uncovered a real person. Both of these books weren't based on real people. That's not how it happens. Author does have a son with Down syndrome, but Sybil felt like more of a real person than any characters in the other. When I finished That's Not How It Happened, I felt like I understood the themes very early on, and the remaining of their perspectives was just reinforcing them. What makes perspective-based storytelling work isn't just switching narrators, it's making every voice feel necessary. Every perspective should give us insight into the situation naturally. The Correspondent absolutely mastered that. Not because it had the biggest plot twist, not because it was more dramatic, but because it trusted us, the reader, enough to quietly let its characters reveal themselves over time. I don't think different perspectives are going away anytime soon with these books, but I do know if they are pulled off like The Correspondent is, I'm going to enjoy those books thoroughly. If you made it to the end of the video, we appreciate you. And do everything you need to do, like, subscribe if you want. But until next time, we'll see you.